What is up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Swinging Sunny Scan. We're recording this Monday night, April the 25th, for Sunday, the April 24th. Before we get into the markets, if any of this content helped you out, please do me a favor, click that like button. If you want to see more content like this in the future, hit subscribe. Click the bell if you want to get notifications anytime I put out new content. All right, everyone, let's jump right into the ES futures S&P 500. Last week and the week before, we were talking about how we ran into this resistance area and we were putting in a pretty decent retrace through all three moving averages, the 200, 50, and 21, kind of in a relatively similar area clustering together. We called this area last week as a possible sign for a bounce. And it was very, very interesting on the morning of April the 21st. The reason why it was interesting was if you were to look into the intraday candle, on the morning of this day, on April the 21st, the ES had basically put in a candle like this before the open at 9:30. And even though I was biased, basically looking for a bounce in the market in this area, to me, a lot of signals are pointing towards the market having the perfect opportunity to bounce and head and retest this resistance area. Basically, looking at this chart like this, when there was a green bar here, I had no reason to think that the market would not have gone all the way back up and tested this area. But the crazy part is, it didn't do that. It actually did the complete opposite and put in a huge red bar engulfing basically the full range of this area for the last 5 to 6 days. This one single bar here, in my opinion, is a huge sign of weakness. Again, reason being, this was a perfect time for the market to bounce. It put in 2 green days in a row, gapping up in the morning with lots of room to rally to test this area, and all it did was engulf all the gains that it made for the last 6 days. That momentum pushed it all the way through that support area where it looked like it was going to bounce on the following day. And today on Monday, I was half expecting to see another bounce in the market, but with the momentum was pretty neutral. But what we got today was a pretty decent bottoming tail. Again, with the potential looking like the market is going to try again to bounce. So the plan going in to the rest of the week, I'm currently open 2 longs. I'm saving one last bullet for another long anywhere between here and the support area down below around the 4100 area. I'm not keen on going super long heavy, just in case the market decides to continue lower, which it can easily do. But we have a pretty good extension to the downside, and I'm looking for at least some kind of short-term bounce on a little bit more long plays. And then if we get an extension back to the upside, I'll be looking at adding some more shorts. Last week, I talked about holding a very small position of TALO. I had my stop set, I think, somewhere around the $19 area, just because I didn't want to give back too much, even though it was a tiny, tiny position. It trailed me out, and this one is now officially closed. EXTR was one that we were talking about that we had to close out before earnings. Earnings is coming up on Wednesday in the morning. This one on Friday of last week, we had a pretty decent move to the downside, kind of testing this support area where it's kind of been consolidating near. I didn't want to wait 2 more days with earnings so close. So I ended up at the end of the day just quickly closing this one out around this 1150 area, and that one is officially closed. Took about a 1R gain on that. RBA is a bit disappointing. We had a really good move, getting really close to target here. I took half on this one with about a 1R gain on that one, but it looks like we are putting in some kind of pullback. So my plan here is if we can break below this pivot here around the 68.50 area, I'm going to lower my stop around 72.50 and hold that last half to see if we can either make it to target or we'll just trail out on this one. Atsg is another one that we're looking at a rest or a pullback. Again, this one was pretty decently close to target. The plan, similar to RBA on this one, is if we can see more momentum to the upside, if we can break above this area, I'm going to move my stop up to $30.70-ish. And basically see if the stock can either make it to target or I'll just trail out on this one. Last position open is GBX. This one was looking a bit dicey. Today we opened around 43 and we tanked all the way down to around 42.50. My stop is at 42.25, so we're about $0.25 away from getting stopped out, but rallied for the rest of the day. So this one's looking pretty weak, but I'll hold this one because I've already decided to accept the loss of the full risk on this stock. So we'll see if it can continue moving up. We have lots of room to earnings. This one, if you remember from last week, I mentioned that this one, I had an expectation of moving really slow. So not only did we expect it to move slow, it also went pretty low. So hopefully this retest is a sign of confirmation that it can hold the support area and continue higher, but we shall see what happens. So throughout a lot of these Swinging Sunday scans, I do quite a bit of talking about how many longs and how many shorts are currently in my portfolio and how having a balanced portfolio is important. I'm going to go over some ideas that did not pan out and actually failed pretty severely. And at the end, I'm going to explain why it's important to have a balanced portfolio. So CMRE is one I called. This one did have a decent bounce, but had a pretty big reversal to the downside, failing to bounce to get to target. TRN, same story, quick bounce, but a fail. UNP, very small bounce and a fail. KEN, a quick bounce and a fail. CPLP, quick bounce and a fail. CCOI, quick bounce and a fail, although this one would never have triggered for me. And AXSM, a quick bounce and a big fail. So basically, if you were to go back a couple weeks, my plan was not to add all of the long ideas to my portfolio. The plan was to add one at 3 different locations. And the reason being was if the market continued to fail and not bounce, having all long positions in the portfolio could equate to all having a loss. So I was willing to risk one loss per location that I thought the market could bounce, but it is not wise to add a ton of positions when there's a good chance the market can continue in the direction opposite to what you expect. So this is the reason why it is good to have a balanced portfolio, because the market is not always going to go in the direction that you want. If you have a collection of long and shorts, the market will either go up, down, or sideways and will likely favor one of those stocks in your portfolio, whether they're long or short. So adding one long idea to see if we can catch a bounce in the market was both a move to manage risk and was also a way to keep the portfolio balanced, which increases the odds of obtaining gains. Another thing I wanted to mention about AXSM, if you were to go back and watch the last video, I looked at this stock and I saw this massive gap here, and I also saw that this stock was part of the therapeutics sector. And I made mention that these types of stocks, when they have big gaps and they're in a particular sector like biotech or therapeutics, they tend to have wild moves and large gaps. After that video, there was a big gap up on this day and then quickly reversed with a huge gap to the downside 4 days later. So we've mentioned this many times before, but stocks that have gapped in the past are more likely to gap in the future. As a swing trader, our biggest enemy are gaps against us. And some of the best ways to avoid gaps are 1, not holding through earnings, 2, avoiding stocks that have gapped often in the past, and 3, avoiding sectors that tend to gap often. I'm glad I caught a glimpse of this giant gap because the smoothness of this stock could have lured me in to take this trade, but I was able to avoid this stock and avoid these gaps thanks to my rule. I hope this rule will protect me in the future. Speak of the devil, another idea we mentioned, ACET. This one for me is ready to trigger anytime over yesterday's bar above 1457. However, I just got finished saying that stocks that have gapped in the past, like this one right here, are more likely to gap in the future. I also said that stocks in biotech or therapeutics can have some wild and crazy moves. This one fits all of those categories, so this one I will not be trading. But if other factors align differently, the retracement of this is pretty smooth. The extension is nice. The retracement is a bit too deep for my liking. It would have been great if it stopped around the $16 area. But if someone is brave enough, you could potentially see a decent bounce on this one before earnings. Earnings is not that far away. Looks like about 2 to 3 weeks. It is an idea to consider. I have 3 ideas for this week. All 3 aren't that great of quality, but here they are. TNP. This one is putting in a pretty decent retracement to this pivot area here. These red bars are really wide and we're seeing some gaps along the way. So this one I'll probably ignore, but I will watch it just in case something really amazing comes up and maybe a really sweet entry. DAR. This one is very similar to the last. Again, wide range red bars, some gaps along the way. Earnings is up close, so quality is not here, but this looks like a candidate for a possible bounce. CMCL, same kind of story. Wide range red bars, gaps along the way. This chart in the past has been really choppy, so this one I will probably ignore. Much like the rest of this year, finding long ideas have been really challenging. So for now, I'm going to probably stick with my current positions and maybe do another scan later in the week to see if I can find anything else. If I do, I will include it in the next Sunday scan. Thanks so much if you stuck to the end. I appreciate it very much. If any of this content helped you out, please click the like button. If you want to see more content like this in the future, hit subscribe. If you want to get notifications anytime I put out new content, click that bell. Always trade with a plan, trade safe, and be well. We'll catch you on the next one.